Hey everybody, Eric Nathy with MountainModernLife.com here in chilly Wisconsin this morning. Wanted to touch base with you real quick on a water pump. Now, if you're new to RVing or thinking about RVing or even an RV veteran, one thing you probably know or should know is that when you're living in your RV, you're never going to run out of problems that you need to handle. And that was really apparent for Katie and I this week. We were working on our Christmas decorations. Wanted to get everything in the spirit so we could spend the month enjoying the Christmas vibe. And then that's when things started going wrong. On Monday, our internet went out, just wouldn't work, couldn't figure out why. So we spent a couple days trying to figure that out, really diving into it. We had to order a couple other parts. I'll get into that in another video, kind of give you a little bit more detail. But then 2 nights ago, as I'm doing the dishes, I have everything washed. The last dish is a blender. It's covered with soap, and the water stops pumping. So I knew that our freshwater tank was full. Well, not full, but about 1/3 full, because in the winter you definitely want to keep it a little bit lower to help it from fully freezing. But side note. Anyway, so I knew we had water in our tank and it just wasn't getting pumped throughout the RV. So we went ahead and we turned off the water pump, let it sit overnight, and then in the morning we thought to ourselves, let's just give it a go, see what happens. And we turned it on and it started working. Our water was pumping, it was great. Katie and I were high-fiving, celebrating, and then 4 minutes later it quit working again. So we realized that we were gonna have to do something to fix it, and especially since we're here in Wisconsin, it's really cold. We're not continuously staying hooked up to our water supply outside. We're actually running off the tank, help keep things a little bit easier from freezing. So it's important for us to make sure that our water pump is working. So I went over, I called my buddy Matt from Friendship RV. It turns out he had a pump in stock that would work with our unit. It's not the exact same pump because they quit manufacturing this one, but it's basically, I guess, the big brother of this version. Anyway, so then I went over to Friendship RV and I met up with Steve, who got the pump for me and got me all taken care of. But he did give me a couple tips that he suggested I take a look at before replacing the water pump. So real quick, I want to show you those 2 tips. All right, so tip number 1 is check the strainer for your water pump. Now, one thing that kind of confused me in the beginning is I was looking for my strainer on my water pump, and the trick is that if you're looking for it, don't get discouraged if you can't find it, because it's actually not attached to the water pump. Your strainer will be attached to a hose coming off of your water pump. So if you look right back here, you can see this white bulb looking thing. That's actually our strainer. So once you find that, what you want to do is make sure that your outsource water is turned off, and you know, to eliminate any pressure built up into the water pump, so when you take that strainer off it'll spray everywhere. Still, you're probably going to lose a little bit of water, so just be aware of that. But what you want to do is screw that white bulb off and then look inside. There should be a mesh wire in there. Just make sure that it's not clogged or filthy. One of the things, as I was doing my research, I found is that one of the #1 causes for water pump failure or water pump problems is that the strainer is actually dirty and needs to be cleaned. Now for us, when we took it off, there was no dirt in there. It was pretty much spotless, so we knew that that wasn't the cause, so we moved on to tip number 2. All right, so tip number 2, making sure that you have power coming to your water pump. So the last thing you want to do is go out, spend the money on a new water pump, get here, replace everything, get it good to go, and then realize that you still have the same problems. So what we have here is a device that allows us to hook up to the hot side with the clamp and then touch the ground with the tip here, and then if you have power, this little light bulb on the inside will light up. Another point to note though real quick before I show you this is that when you're going to test this, you need to make sure that your water pump switch on the inside of your unit is turned on, because when that switch is off, you're actually cutting off the power to the water pump. So if you try to test this with that switch off, you're not going to get anything and you're going to think that's your problem, but that's not really your problem. So make sure your switch is on and then give this a test. I'm going to cross the screen for you real quick here. So we take our hot wire and put it in here on the teeth, and then we take our ground wire and touch here, and see how that light switches on? That means that we have power in there. So tip number 2 is check your power source. Our power source is good. So at this point, trying those 2 things, we're pretty confident that it is our water pump that went out. So what we have over here is our SureFlow. What we'll get into is how we're going to replace that next. Alright, so here we are. We tested the strainer. We saw that it was clean and it was good to go, so that wasn't the problem. And then we tested the power coming into the water pump and realized that we do have power, so that's not the problem. Quick tip, after I tested the power, I went inside and turned off the water pump switch. That way there's no more power coming to these wires. And then now we're going to go ahead and disconnect the water pump. I'll do that real quick. I'm going to disconnect both waters, both water inlet and outlet, and then I'm going to disconnect the actual water pump from the wall and pull it out. Alright, so here is our old water pump. It is completely removed. Now, one of the cool things about replacing the water pump that I found is that it's fairly straightforward. What you'll see is that you have your ground wire and you have your hot wire. And on the new one, it's going to be the exact same. You have a ground and hot. You'll want to take those two, hook them up to the ground and hot that's coming in from the power source. And then also, as far as inlet and outlet, they're right here. So it's a pretty simple hookup there as well. And also too, on our specific rig, they have a piece of wood here attached that we can drill into. So I'm going to go ahead and use the same exact screws that are on my old water pump to put in our new water pump. Real quick, I'll be right back and we'll go ahead and get the new one installed. Alright, so as you can see here, I pre-drilled my screws into the rubber piece. That's because they're a little bit smaller than the screws, so that they actually drill through the rubber as well to keep it more secure, but also give it a little bit of wiggle room. But we'll install it real quick. Alright, so our new water pump is put in place. I'll go ahead and connect the connectors and then we'll be set to go. Alright, so both of our waters are connected, the inlet and the outlet. Now I don't know if for you it seemed like that was extremely difficult for me, but I cut myself pretty bad yesterday, so I'm missing a thumb, so it definitely took a little longer than expected. But anyway, now we're going to go ahead and plug up the power, and then we're going to go inside and give it a test. So I'm going to give this a test. I'll be right back. Alright, so here we are. So I plugged up the power, I plugged up all the tubes, got everything going. I went inside, turned on the water pump, tried the water, both hot and cold, and no water came out. So I was a little discouraged. I came back out here, and what I realized was that when I was unhooking my inlet and outlet water tubes, I actually switched my filter to bypass instead of open in order to try to keep out as much water as I could while I was removing those pipes. So I came out here, switched it back to open, and then when I went inside and turned on the water pump and ran the water, it works perfectly. So we have officially changed out our water pump and we are good to go. I hope that this video helped you if you're looking to switch out your own water pump. Or I hope that the two tips in the beginning maybe helped you address the problem before even needing to change out your water pump. But if you guys have any questions or comments, definitely feel free to leave them below or visit us at mountainmodernlife.com. As always, thanks for swinging by, and we'll see you guys again soon.